David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
I'm starting today off a little bit differently. It's the last day of February, and this morning I was really feeling just kind of down about the political situation. And I know I've said a bunch of times that I've sort of become desensitized to the day-to-day of what's going on, stories that sort of would pretty clearly be major scandals at some prior point in American history, barely get any attention because it's sort of scandal after embarrassment after outrageous scandal, day after day after day. And that's still true, right? I'm still feeling desensitized to the day-to-day. But this morning I was really sort of feeling like the futility of it all. I was thinking about the political reality, right? Trump won. He's president. He's certainly not been able to do everything he wants, but he's doing major damage to many American institutions. He's really embarrassing the United States around the world. And somehow, like, I actually got to a place where I allowed to creep into my head the idea that maybe the Hatriots who write in are correct, that maybe there's nothing more to really do, and the David Pakman Show should kind of like wrap up or come to an end. And I started thinking back, the show started when I was in college, sort of on a whim, really. And it's grown, and it's gone from something I did after class every other Wednesday by myself to a 5-day-a-week show with 2 full-time producers. But are we really having an impact right now? And on a day-to-day basis, I laugh off the Hatriot Mails. I laugh off the criticisms that are unhinged and ridiculous. And we have fun with it. But in some way, I was wondering, like, are they right? Are they right in some way? Are we sort of trying to empty a pool with a teaspoon, sort of an analogy for an exercise in futility? And I've never believed that it's a waste of time. I've never listened to the haters in a real way. If I had, the show would have probably ended in that basement in Northampton, Massachusetts at WXOJ more than 10 years ago without ever having a single employee or dollar of revenue. And it's really easy to convince oneself that you're having an impact, right? Like, hey, we built something sustainable. Most independent shows like this one never even make that single dollar, never mind being able to have staff and a private studio. But what is the political impact here, right? Maybe we failed in some way. Maybe I should go back to electronic sales, although I couldn't because Circuit City is out of business, or teaching college or something, and producer Pat can become, I don't know, an airline pilot or something, and producer Noah Ferguson could go sell insurance. I don't know why I'm picking these things, but whatever, right? Insert some other activity. And I realized I was going down this negative path that really served no purpose. So I tried to reframe and think about it in a different way. And I went back to our audience email archives, which are not there only in case we ever need to submit some of those emails as evidence in a federal trial against someone who sends us 100 bizarre emails. I also keep them to be able to see the praise that we've received. And mixed in with all of the hater messages, there were some really positive messages about how I influenced this law school student 5 years ago to go in the direction of public defense or environmental law, or how that person 2 years ago had never really understood why politics even mattered. But because of the show, they became not only regular viewers, but also activists for the progressive idea. And how I reframed, at least in my head, was sort of to realize that it's really easy to look around and feel like we can't possibly be having an impact because, after all, as I mentioned, Trump is president. The U.S. is again becoming a laughingstock around the world. The Florida Senate is putting together a bill to arm teachers, and we're destroying our planet every single day with our disregard for what's going on with the climate. But then I realized I'm sort of ignoring my own critical thinking, which is that it's really hard to measure negatives. It's really hard to measure the absence of something. And I wondered, what would we be dealing with right now worldwide were it not for not just the David Pakman show, it's not a delusion of grandeur, but the whole of independent progressive media and investigative journalism and critical reporting that have exposed political and corporate wrongdoing and challenged the extremist ideas in interviews and in analyses, and at least made attempts to create, I guess I'd say, a more educated and engaged public through pieces like, for example, the Critical Thinking miniseries, which we're going to start releasing this week. And really, it would be the worst possible time to end the David Pakman show, even though this feeling of futility I know is shared by at least some of our audience. It would actually be the worst time. So I know that there are people in the audience that are feeling hopeless, and many are even saying, David, he's going to win re-election. I just don't know if I can stay involved in politics. I don't think I can do another 7 years of this. I sort of feel the same way on a day-to-day basis. But what I came to realize this morning, I was up early, as some of you can imagine. How much time did I have to do all this thinking? What I came to realize this morning is that we actually have to stay involved now. And for me, that means, no, don't think about hanging it up. Instead, think about how to double down and double the size of the show, which is much more difficult, right? It would be way easier to say, hey, you know what? We lost. The Trumpists won. They have their guy. They're spreading their brand of sort of anti-intellectualism and non-diplomacy. And we lost, and let's go be insurance salespeople and airline pilots and college professors or electronic salesmen or whatever, right? But remember, Trump won because of 77,000 votes in 3 states. He lost the popular vote by 3 million votes. And he lost the world, which by and large was on our side for the past 8 years, and is by and large still not on Trump's side, as we've seen in poll after poll after poll. And the silver lining here is that we do have a resurgence in political activism as a result of this administration, the likes of which we arguably haven't seen for a long time. So I started in a very dark place this morning, but I'm here to tell you that I'm recommitting to the growth of the show, not just the sort of slow, steady growth we've seen since Donald Trump won in November of 2016, but I'm thinking way bigger because it actually is the time to grow, not the time to walk away. And it's going to require not only doing the daily show that we do, but continuing to do the long form pieces, doing the extras like the Critical Thinking miniseries that starts to be released this week. But by the way, thanks to your support, and a lot of other things. And if you believe that it's time to renew the commitment, you probably think I'm going to say become a member now, but I'm not going to say that. Yes, sure, if you value what we do, become a member. But if you also think it's time, then help spread the message that there are alternatives to this sort of depraved, anti-intellectual, pseudo-jingoistic nonsense that has been perpetrated by those in the Oval Office. And whether it's emailing shows that you listen to or watch and say, hey, maybe interview David Pakman, or emailing me and say, hey, interview this other progressive host or activist who's doing something great, or posting clips to Facebook, or even just tweeting and emailing in and saying, hey, David, I'm glad you decided not to walk away because what you're doing is valuable and it's a piece of what we all should be doing. And that is doubling down now and definitely not backing out. So my commitment here is that if there is the desire and if there is the demand and the audience infrastructure, we're ready to go sort of full steam ahead. Now, if the desire isn't there, if I'm wrong here, and you're going to hear me say this and you'll be more influenced by the idea of walking away rather than doubling down, let me know. Say, you know what, David, I think your initial instinct this morning, very early this morning, was the right one, which is we've failed, we've lost, there's no coming back, and you might as well walk away because we're walking away. Let me know. I don't think that's the case. I think I'm going to hear from people who are going to say, no, you know what, David, in spite of the feeling of futility, in spite of the questions around what exactly was accomplished over the last 8 years, 9 years leading up to Trump's election, if this is where we are now, I think the overwhelming majority in our audience, not the haters, but really our core audience, is going to hear this and they're going to say, no, it's time to double down, and we're here to help you do that. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at dpacman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. And we're here. We've got a fantastic program for you today. Lots of news, lots of activism, and lots of new things going on that I'm going to talk to you right after the break about.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Michael Montanara. Michael, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. Signups are happening daily at davidpakman.com/membership. And I also want to thank someone who's been with us for a while. Callie Christensen is today's sustaining member of the day, and she has been with us since the day of my mom's birthday back in 2011, March 28th, 2011. Callie Christensen signed up. She's still a member, and she's on track to start her 8th year of membership in just about 5 weeks. So thanks to Michael, thanks to Callie, and please sign up at davidpakman.com/membership. Your funding allows us to do what we do, including the Critical Thinking mini-series, which is going to launch tomorrow. And also you can check out Patreon, where you can make a contribution of as little as $1 per month. I would love $1 a day, but you can start at $1 a month at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. It is time for Hatriot Mail, and we've got something very cool. We are trying to stay topical with Hatriot Mail intros. So our professional Hatriot Mail interpreter has voiced some new Hatriot Mail intros, the first of which I'm premiering today. I think these are very timely. Let's take a listen to Hatriot Mail.
Teachers can buy their own school supplies, but we'll throw in the Glock for free. Hatriot Mail.
Yeah.
Written by patriots who hate David Pakman. Because America. And because freedom.
That's exactly right. We just don't have the money for everybody to even have their own book in school. They're going to have to share some 7th edition ratty dog-eared book. But how about firearms for all teachers? Because we've always got money for that. I like it when Hatriot Mail is topical.
It's a good slogan. It's like, a chicken in every pot, a Glock in every teacher's holster.
I like it. I mean, I hate it, obviously, but I like pointing out the absurdity of it. Okay. Let's get into this week's Hatriot Mail.
So logic dictates that the liberals are guilty. Right, Pakman? Oh, so you inspected the voter rolls? Oh, wait, you didn't. So Pakman is a slimy little worm yet again. This is the biggest SJW circle jerk I have ever seen. I hate you, Parkman. How you get gang raped. Ooh. You disgust me.
Yeah, this is what we would call a Hillary really lost the popular vote conspiracy theorist, because since I didn't inspect the voter rolls, clearly Trump is right that 3 to 5 million, quote, illegals voted for Hillary Clinton, right? I think that's sort of the conspiracy theory that this one connects to.
Oh, you have to verify all 150 million votes cast in the 2016 election.
Otherwise, you just don't really know what happened. Turn Hatriot Mail into something positive. Give a middle finger to the Hatriots, as I like to say. Pat's flipping me off right now, but that's unrelated. That has nothing to do with Hatriot Mail. He's just really angry. Use the coupon code Hatriot40 when you sign up for membership at davidpakman.com/membership. It'll save you 40% off of membership, and it'll also send a nice little FU to the Hatriots. All right, let's talk about Golden Boy, Trump's son-in-law. Ooh, disturbing image, by the way, of him. Nice pick, Pat. And advisor Jared Kushner, who has lost access to top secret intelligence. I've reported to you time and again that Jared Kushner has been working with an interim top secret security clearance, along with, by the way, dozens of other White House staffers. I've told you that Jared Kushner has submitted multiple incorrect and incomplete disclosure forms required in the process meant to get him a security clearance. I have been adamant that Jared Kushner should not have access to any top secret information, nor should he even have a role in Donald Trump's White House, quite frankly, but that's another story. And this is starting to come to a head because Jared Kushner has now had his security clearance downgraded, as well as a number of other White House aides who have been, again, working with interim top secret level security clearances. But Jared Kushner is still going to have access. He has not had his clearance revoked. He has had it downgraded from top secret to secret. Recall that once again, much of this is self-inflicted, right? The reason we even found out that all of these interim clearances were being used is that serial accused spouse abuser Rob Porter had his scandal, and we learned that he had been working for months after it was made clear that he'd have trouble getting a security clearance, to put it lightly. And then we learned about the rest of it, including dozens of people, as well as Jared Kushner, who were working with these temporary interim security clearances. Now, Trump could single-handedly and unilaterally grant Jared Kushner a permanent top secret clearance. If the president does it, then it will be made so. For now, at least, Trump is saying he's going to leave that up to Chief of Staff John Kelly, who really has no credibility any longer because of that Rob Porter scandal, and himself should resign, but no indication, at least at this point, that John Kelly is going to be going bye-bye. So, of course, since many of these documents at the secret and top secret levels are secret, we don't actually know exactly what Kushner will no longer be able to see. But what we do know, because it's been widely reported, is that while Donald Trump is increasingly not reading the PDB, the Presidential Daily Briefing, a sort of summary of the most relevant and pressing intelligence from the prior 24 hours, Jared Kushner was reading the PDB, and he's no longer going to be able to. Bradley Moss, who's a lawyer that specializes in national security law and clearances of this kind, said, quote, he cannot see the PDB, not a chance. That's interesting. Now, the craziest thing about all of this is that Jared Kushner's lawyer seems to be saying, you don't have to worry that Kushner isn't going to be able to do his job anymore as advisor, because the downgrading of his top secret security clearance to secret is not going to impact his ability to do his job at all. Does anybody realize how this is insane? If, according to Kushner's own lawyer, losing the top secret security clearance won't impact his work at all, why did he have a top secret clearance in the first place? In other words, as a basic tenet of national security and compartmentalization of information, you don't clear someone, especially on an interim basis, higher than is necessary for them to do their job. If we believe Kushner's lawyer that his job is completely unaffected by the downgrade, that only raises more questions about why the kid even was given a top secret clearance to begin with.
Do you think that he'll get that top secret security clearance back? I suspect that he won't.
Well,
and the reason why is because I think there's a good chance that Jared Kushner will get indicted by the Mueller probe.
I think so too.
Maybe it's not tomorrow or next week or next month, but if you not only gave him a top secret security clearance, but after taking away, give it back to him, I think that's not good for the Trump administration.
Well, you might be asking me two different questions, right? Question one is, do I think that he would eventually be granted one through the normal process? The answer is absolutely not. It's abundantly clear after he lied or conveniently left out dozens and dozens and dozens of meetings with foreign people from his disclosure forms. I think there's no chance that Jared Kushner actually gets approved for a permanent top secret security clearance, nor should he. The next question is, will someone just say we're going to give him one anyway, whether it's John Kelly or Donald Trump? I'm also leaning towards no. And certainly if Kushner gets indicted, then absolutely not. And I'm guessing that if that were the case, he would step back from his role in the administration, which I think he might be going in the direction of anyway. It's the dumb sort of leading and representing the dumb here. And I was reading online comments about this. And to many people, it almost seems, and I'm talking about people on the left here, they seem to be sort of relishing in how things are going poorly for Jared Kushner. Like they're cheerleading that his security clearance has been downgraded because they feel it's a sort of insult to Jared Kushner. I think that's the wrong approach, right? This was a national security risk. This was sloppy handling of top secret information. We should be concerned about this as a national security issue rather than feeling like we won because something was taken away from Jared Kushner. Listen, I understand the pleasure that people might experience at reading these headlines, but this is fundamentally a national security thing. And in the end, more than likely, Kelly, I believe, is not going to give Kushner the clearance because Kelly doesn't want to be further wrapped up in this type of nonsense with Trump. And I think from what we're reading that the Kelly-Trump sort of confrontation may well come to a head. We're reading that the Trump family is increasingly very much at odds with John Kelly. I think it's more likely that Kelly leaves than that he gives Jared Kushner his clearance.
I think so too, especially because Kelly runs a very tight ship. And it seems
Yeah,
as though Jared and Ivanka have been able to circumvent the normal ranks of the White House and can obviously speak directly to the president, whereas other officials can't.
I don't disagree with you that in some general sense, Kelly does run a tighter ship, at least, than was previously run by Reince Priebus. Although the fact that Kelly knew Porter had multiple wife-beating accusations against him and allowed him to continue working for months and months on these interim clearances, that really soured my perception of Kelly as the supposedly elegant guy that Donald Trump liked to refer to him as. So anyway, not good news for Jared Kushner. So let's continue talking about Jared Kushner. We learned that Trump advisor and son-in-law Jared Kushner has had his interim top secret security clearance removed. He now has an interim secret security clearance. It's a small victory, but it is a small victory that exposes that this is not normal and that we've got some major problems here. And all over the media yesterday, you had experts speculating that when you have someone like Kushner with business ties all over the world, with debts to all sorts of people all over the world, that when you put him in a position of both power and access to sensitive information, that it's a major risk and that it exposes him to being manipulated or squeezed or pressured by people that he's working with from other countries. Even if Kushner is no longer running his businesses, he still has financial interests in those businesses, and he still knows how geopolitical events and decisions might impact those businesses. If you're in another country, could be a friendly country, could be a less friendly country, and you know what Jared Kushner's business ties are and his financial troubles, and you know that the guy has an interim top secret security clearance, you can use that to your advantage when dealing with Kushner. And the great thing is, we don't have to speculate about this anymore because the Washington Post has a report exposing that at minimum 4 countries have been talking about how they could manipulate Jared Kushner on the basis of his business arrangements and his financial trouble and his basic total lack of foreign policy experience. We know specifically, because of reporting from the Washington Post, of the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, China, Israel, and Mexico, at the minimum, according to current and former officials, and more than likely there are other countries as well, who were discussing how to take Jared Kushner's circumstances and manipulate him to their advantage. Is this surprising? Absolutely not. Any experienced foreign policy team would recognize Kushner has no place in international diplomacy. He represents a huge risk to the United States because of his background. Now, do we know whether these 4 countries or others acted on their ideas to manipulate Jared Kushner? No, we don't know that. But what we do know is that this could end up having some pretty significant legal implications. Special prosecutor Robert Mueller, we know, has been investigating the conversations that Jared Kushner had and protocols that he used to set up conversations with foreign leaders. We know that Robert Mueller is interested in financially what is in the background of Jared Kushner. And even officials at the White House have expressed concern that Kushner was being tricked. That's a quote, tricked in conversations with foreign officials. We've also learned that some foreign leaders were being specific in requesting that they wanted to deal only and directly with Jared Kushner, which is really alarming because it's not Jared Kushner's sense of humor that's making him appealing for other countries to deal with. It's that his inexperience and his naivete are making him a great target for other countries to deal with. And from the beginning, I mean, it was always inappropriate for Kushner and Ivanka Trump, by the way, to be involved in this administration. And what I'm hoping is that Kushner's sort of window of opportunity for even being involved in this administration is starting to close. If he's indicted, the window will be hopefully slammed shut. But are we starting to see the sunsetting of Jared Kushner and Ivanka's role in this administration?
I don't know about Ivanka, but I think Jared Kushner's sun is definitely setting. And I think the lesson here, the takeaway, is that if you're going to have someone who's so compromised and so inexperienced in your administration.
Yeah.
Just put him in charge of domestic issues like
Yeah, right.
government ethics reform and criminal justice reform and solving the opioid crisis. That's enough for Kushner.
Yeah, and I think he'd still be out of his league, by the way, doing those things, sadly speaking. But yeah, there's no credible way to defend him having the role that he has. And based on what we know now, I mean, lying multiple times on that SF-86 disclosure form, having his interim security clearance downgraded, being targeted for manipulation by other countries. This guy can't negotiate trade. He's certainly not going to be negotiating Israeli-Palestinian peace, which I don't know what the timeline was for him solving that one, but I think we're further from the solution rather than closer to it. I wouldn't want this guy negotiating my car lease, never mind Middle East peace. And the question now is, I mean, I guess there's really two questions for me. Is this unraveling to the point where it will be untenable to keep him on? I don't know, because Trump does have what I guess we can characterize as, quote, loyalty to the family. So I don't know that Trump will actually push him out. I think it will be sort of incumbent upon maybe Kushner's lawyer or his circle to go, listen, Trump's not going to fire you because you're his son-in-law, which, by the way, is a reason you shouldn't even be doing this in the first place. But you should probably step away for the good of the country, or he might just be indicted, right? And honestly, I don't even know that Trump would push him out if he was indicted, because he would just say it's a witch hunt and he can stay. But again, I'm trying to imagine how reasonable people would act, and these are not reasonable people. But if under indictment, you would hope that Kushner would say, I've got to deal with the indictment. I can't be negotiating Israeli-Palestinian peace. I can't be negotiating trade deals or whatever else. I don't know the answer, but my hope is, and the correct path forward would be, that Kushner and his role in this administration start to evaporate. And I'm actually going to talk about what might already be set up as a soft landing for Kushner a little bit later in the program. Discuss this or any other stories from the show with more than 5,000 of our viewers and listeners on our subreddit at davidpakman.com/REDDIT.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Vivica Novak from McClatchy about her team's investigation into funding from Russia to Trump, specifically through the NRA, the National Rifle Association. And this was the type of interview that it's very interesting, but it often doesn't do super well. Like, I don't think when the interview was over that we thought this interview is going to hit a nerve, it's going to do incredibly well and blow up. But it actually did hit a nerve on a couple of fronts. One is that the YouTube clip for that interview with Vivica Novak was immediately brigaded by the types of comments that often end up being the troll bots and the Russian bots online, spreading disinformation anytime anything critical of Russia is mentioned. But secondly, it also did quite well. It's got about 100,000 views so far, and neither of those is that common for a 15-minute interview with a McClatchy reporter about something related to campaign finance and following the money trail. And now the story is blowing up even more. This Russia NRA Trump funding story has sort of gone mainstream, and the NRA is acting really, really shady about it. Democratic Senator Ron Wyden wrote 2 letters asking about some of these links between the NRA and Moscow and between the NRA and Russian nationals, and the NRA is refusing to answer the questions that Senator Wyden has asked. They sent out this really aggressively worded, but lacking almost any specific details letter, basically just saying, hey, listen, we follow election law and we don't accept foreign funds, period. And that it's really the Russian dude who allegedly gave them money that's being investigated, not the NRA, basically saying, Senator Wyden, leave us the hell alone. Now, of course, the letter from the NRA doesn't actually address the specific allegations, including that NRA officials went to Moscow in late 2015. It doesn't address the source of the $30 million in funding that the NRA gave to Donald Trump. It doesn't address the broader funding of the NRA by Russia beyond specifically for Donald Trump's campaign, and it also doesn't address the existence of shell companies that are reportedly being used for this funding. In other words, this is getting way more interesting. What started with us as a story that, while very relevant, did not have sort of mainstream penetration, when I see this non-denial, I become more convinced that Vivica Novak and McClatchy and her team are onto something with their reporting, and that, yes, the NRA is accepting money from Russia. And what people need to realize, sort of at the highest level in the broadest scope, is that the NRA is not a patriotic organization. Even by Trump's use of this horrible slogan, America First, the NRA is not an America First organization. The NRA uses the idea of being patriotic as marketing for themselves to then actually work on their real loyalty, which is to gun manufacturers, period. It has nothing to do with country for the NRA. It has nothing to do with safety for the NRA. It has nothing to do with anything other than give us money which we can use to get more guns sold for our clients who are the gun manufacturers. That's the reality.
And it didn't used to be that way. The NRA started as a gun safety organization. It was geared towards the individual members. And it was only a few decades ago that they started taking money from those gun manufacturers and having those corrupting influences. Remember that Wayne LaPierre video from 1999?
Yeah.
You see that? He advocated for gun-free zones in schools. You never see that today.
I actually read, and I don't have it in front of me, I'm going off memory, but there was a prior either director or higher-up of the NRA who actually, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he said something like, I don't even own a gun myself. Like, I don't even like the idea of carrying a firearm. But we're here we're going to defend the Second Amendment because it exists. I don't remember who that was. I mean, it's almost, it kind of does seem logical. It's shocking that we're so shocked by that. So listen, the NRA, they'll go to Russia. They'll ignore the shooting strategically. They'll flaunt the American flag and a bald eagle or whatever other symbols they'll use. But fundamentally, this is a marketing and lobbying organization for gun manufacturers, period. Now, you can say, I like that. I like organizations that ignore public health and country and everything else just to sell guns, or you can be against that, but you have to understand what it is to honestly and sort of accurately analyze it, and a lot of people don't. They see the NRA as this patriotic organization. What it really is a truly horrible lobby for the gun manufacturers. And in the meantime, the distract-a-thon continues. It's not, is Obama using the wrong mustard, but it's what's going on with Hillary's emails and what's going to be going on with this investigation into Russia funding Bernie Sanders. And meanwhile, this is a really big story that we've been covering that has been mostly ignored by corporate media. And my hope is that it now does go mainstream. Russia's interest in doing this, if you're wondering, like, why would Russia even want to fund the NRA? Russia's interest in doing this is to create chaos. The NRA's interest is having more money with which they can promote gun sales, and missing from both of their goals is anything that would be good for the actual people of the United States. Do not misunderstand for a second what the goals are of each player in this entire fiasco. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this next story because, in a way, it's a non-story that was tried to be made into a story to get attention, but the fact that they tried it makes it a story. Wait, David, what the hell are you talking about? It's a story about a non-story, and the story is the attempt to make the non-story into a real story. Pat's super confused right now. Let me just tell you what the story is. Donald Trump has decided, as the Drudge Report headline proclaimed yesterday, that just 13 months into his presidency, he's running for re-election in 2020, and he's starting to plan that campaign, and he's even hired a new campaign manager. Wait a second. Didn't Trump file for re-election on Inauguration Day? Yeah, he did. There is nothing actually newsworthy about the attempt yesterday by right-wing media to make a big deal out of Trump is running in 2020, except to try to distract from everything else that's going on that's not going particularly well for Donald Trump. And I would argue, start to create a possible soft landing for Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, but I'll get to that in a second. The first part of this is just sort of the vile status quo of American politics. We often talk about how with 2-year congressional terms, members in the House of Representatives are basically campaigning all the time. As soon as one election is done, their next one is 24 months away, and they immediately go into campaigning for that one. A lot of time spent raising money for members of the House of Representatives, not so much time spent governing. You would hope that with a 4-year presidential term, you might get more than 13 months before the next campaign begins. But no, Donald Trump is, I guess, officially starting the campaign now. But the big part of this is that Trump is saying, I am now announcing my 2020 campaign manager. And it's going to be a guy named Brad Parscale, who was Trump's digital director in 2016. This is by and large, number one, an attempt to distract in the sense that Trump filed for re-election the day he was inaugurated. He could have made a big deal out of running for re-election at any time. And this is an attempt to take attention away from the legislative disasters, the possibly illegal hush money payments to a porn star, saying that he would be willing to raise the age for buying guns, but then the NRA doesn't like it, so Trump starts to back off of it. One disaster after another. So a good way to distract the Trumpists is by saying, hey, he's running again. But I believe that there might be something here related to Jared Kushner and possibly to Ivanka Trump. Ivanka Trump has a very bad week under her belt. Jared Kushner just had his top secret security clearance downgraded, and every indication is that he might either be indicted or forced out of the Trump administration, maybe just by logic and reason, if not by Trump himself. Is it possible that starting to talk about 2020 now and starting to talk about 2020 and the campaign as if it's something real to participate in this early might create an opportunity for Ivanka and or Jared to gracefully say, we are going to transition into working with the great Brad Parscale on the 2020 re-election campaign and maybe save some face and be less embarrassed about the fact that their involvement in the administration was a nepotistic, if that's a word, disaster and crony capitalist swamp filling, and give them something else to do. I mean, I'm speculating here.
It would be a good way to distract, but I actually think that this announcement is pretty interesting because I always thought that Trump would be just a one-and-done president, serve that one term, especially given the fact that he's going to be, 73, 74 years old.
But the question is,
and he doesn't want to lose. So,
by choice,
if the country's not with him, would he run again? Maybe not.
Fair enough. There's two ways to argue the one and done. One is he won't run for re-election. The other is he'll run, but he will lose.
He doesn't want to lose.
The other possibility is he's forced into resignation or impeached, but that's sort of further down the line at this point. Yeah, he can still find a way out of this if he wants to. Like, he's not committed. It's very, very early. And in fact, starting to talk about this so early might be a way to start feeling out the circumstances and the atmosphere to sort of test the waters. Bottom line, it's a pathetic attempt to distract from right-wing media. Who knows if they coordinated it with the Trump administration? I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but I did feel the need to mention it since it's an attempt to refocus. And you know what? It's probably something that some Trumpists will see and love. They'll say, look at him. He's not even going to wait to see if he can win. He wants to lead the country, so he's running for re-election now or whatever. Of course, those people probably also believe Trump is 6'3" and weighs 239 pounds. So not that much sense we're going to talk about. Give us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/David Pakman Show. Quick break, more politics after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
In the wake of the Parkland, Florida mass shooting, Dick's Sporting Goods is taking a hard stance and has made the decision that it is not going to sell assault-style rifles, as well as making some other changes to their gun sales policy in their Dick's Sporting Goods stores. And now you might be saying, well, what other stores are there? I will get to that in a little bit. We learned that the Parkland shooter bought a gun at Dick's last year, although it wasn't the kind of gun that was ultimately used in the shooting. And here's their CEO, Edward Stack, on Good Morning America, telling George Stephanopoulos about the change they're making and why.
Our exclusive interview with Ed Stack. He's the chairman and CEO of Dick's Sporting Goods, the nation's largest sporting goods retailer. And just moments ago, he released an open letter announcing that Dick's will no longer sell assault-style rifles, no longer sell firearms to anyone under 21 years of age, no longer sell high-capacity magazines. He's here to explain why. Good morning, Ed.
Thanks.
This is a dramatic move. Tell us why you're taking it.
Well, thanks for having me today to talk about this. And as we looked at what happened down in Parkland, and we were so disturbed and saddened by what happened, we felt we really needed to do something. And so we've decided not to sell these assault weapons any longer in any of our stores, and the other things that we talked about.
Yeah, and the shooter down in Parkland actually bought a gun at a Dick's store, not the assault weapon.
Right. He did, and he bought a shotgun from us back in November, and it wasn't the gun, nor it was the type of gun that he used in the shooting. But when that happened, we realized that the system, and we did everything by the book. We did everything that the law required, and still he was able to buy a gun.
Amazing that he was able to buy one.
He was still able to buy a gun, and when we looked at that, we said, the systems that are in place across the board just aren't effective enough to keep us from selling someone a gun like that. And so we've decided that we're not going to sell the assault-type rifles any longer.
So they're still going to sell firearms. This is still a good thing. The full list of changes, again, as was mentioned there, which we're putting up on the screen for you, includes that they are no longer going to sell assault-style rifles. They are no longer going to sell firearms to anyone under 21, no high-capacity magazines, and they never have and never will sell bump stocks that allow semi-automatic weapons to fire more rapidly. I actually do think that 18 to 21 makes a difference. The level of maturity for a 21-year-old compared to an 18-year-old in many cases is pretty different. You're going from a high school senior or college freshman to someone potentially almost done with 4 years of college. Not for everybody. I know people who were just as immature at 21 as they were at 18, but big picture, that does make a difference. This is the right decision. There's a lot of calculated marketing and PR here, right? And first of all, it's that Dick's has a sister store called Field & Stream, and every indication is that Field & Stream is making no changes to what's available there, and Field & Stream is really more the place where people go at a higher rate to buy guns than regular Dick's stores. But what surfaced as a result of this story is that tons of people had no idea that Dick's sold guns at all. And I admit, I don't go to Dick's often. About a year ago, the bike that I keep in Western Massachusetts was stolen. And I went to Dick's to buy a new bicycle. And I have no recollection of seeing guns there. Maybe the Hadley, Massachusetts location just doesn't sell the guns. I'm not saying they don't sell them. I just don't remember seeing them. But the gun fetishists are furious with Dick's, saying, well, now we're going to boycott Dick's, and this is a terrible decision that they're making. I say go ahead and boycott them, right? This is fundamentally a business decision. This is the free market that the right claims to push for. Dick's is free to do whatever they want in terms of what they do and don't sell within the law based on what's best for them. And I believe that this is mostly Dick's making a business and PR decision because it's not, Dick's is a huge company, right? It's not like the company policy reflects the moral views of any individual or a vice president or the CEO or whoever. They get together in a room and they make a business decision about what's best for the Dick's brand, meaning for their business. And this is what they came up with. I agree with the decision. If you big picture support the rights of businesses to make decisions in the market, then you've got to support Dick's doing this. You might choose not to go to Dick's as a result of the decision, but the speed with which the American right that claims to be for the free market and private business sovereignty starts going crazy on companies when they make the decisions that are best for them is just laughable.
Yeah, and I don't really feel comfortable questioning the motives of the CEO of Dick's Sporting Goods because I'm sure he was disturbed by the Parkland shooting, of course. But this has been going on for a long time, and assault-style rifles have always been the choice of these mass shooters.
For a lot of
time,
time, yeah.
This is just starting now.
And to be clear, yeah, handguns, the guns involved in most individual instances where someone is killed or injured with a gun, but the assault-style rifles, much more common in the mass shootings. And I agree in the sense that I just don't think the decision really relates to the moral rectitude of the CEO. I believe what the guy says, but I think that the broader decision here is a business decision and a PR decision and a marketing decision, and one that they're completely entitled to make. So good for them. I'm curious about Field & Stream, though. It doesn't seem like anything's changing there. One of the areas of politics that should transcend political party is that of corruption and cronyism. We should all want what Donald Trump promised us, which is draining the swamp, ending the status quo of lobbyists and Wall Street people running government, getting rid of the corrosive corporate influence in government, all of that stuff. But of course, Trump hasn't done it, right? He's made it worse. He's filled the swamp. And now is in what I guess I can only describe as a brazen and almost cartoonish act of cronyism and swamp filling. Trump wants his personal pilot to run the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. Remember how before flying on Air Force One as president, Trump had his own plane? It was a Boeing 757. That plane had a pilot. The guy's name is John Duncan. And apparently John Duncan, spelled like Dunkin' Donuts, apparently doesn't have much to do now since Air Force pilots fly Air Force One. And we've learned that John Duncan is on the short list of finalists to run the FAA, which regulates all of civil aviation in the United States and has a budget of more than $16 billion. Now, naturally, the Trump administration is saying, oh, this has nothing to do with John Duncan being Trump's private pilot. It's just that he's really qualified. A White House official said, oh, John Duncan has managed corporate flight department, and he's gone through the process of certifying an airline, and he was overseeing all of Trump's presidential campaign air fleet, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the truth is that John Duncan has mostly just been Trump's pilot. He has no experience running large organizations, which the FAA is. And does anybody believe for a second that John Duncan would even be on the long list of FAA directors if he weren't currently the president's former pilot, never mind the short list? Even Republican Senator John Thune, who would be leading the vetting, hopefully extreme vetting, of the FAA nominee, said that Duncan would have a difficult road ahead if he were to be nominated for this position. This is the epitome of crony capitalism.
Yeah.
No doubt about it, right?
Trump's not picking the experts. He's picking the people that he knows.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know, Jared Kushner, my son-in-law, he needs a job. I can make him in charge of solving peace in the Middle East.
Yeah, he'll get that
Ben
wrapped
Carson, he's a black guy. He can be in charge of HUD.
Yeah, right, because it has the word urban in it. I would actually go further. If you're going to go and say John Duncan is going to run the FAA, make Trump's Boeing 757 flight attendant deputy director of the FAA. Like, just go full in and get everybody who was working on that plane a new job. This is disgusting, and it's laughable, and it barely even registers in the list of the 10 crazy things that have happened in the last 24 hours.
To be fair, though, Duncan is a handsome guy, though. I mean, he looks like he was out of central casting, and we know
super
that
elegant.
Trump likes the good-looking people in his administration.
That's
he put,
exactly
Mike
right.
Pence in as vice president, Neil Gorsuch as a Supreme Court justice.
Wait a second. Pence is a good-looking guy?
According to Trump, yeah.
Has he said that?
Yeah,
That's
he looks the part.
stunning to me. That is absolutely stunning. When I see Pence, I don't think this is an offensive term, but every time I use it, I tread carefully. Doesn't Pence have pedophile eyes?
Oh, yeah, I would have to analyze that, I think.
I look closely at Pence, and by the way, I'm not going to name names, but there's lots of other people in the Trump administration not exactly rating as someone primed to be an Instagram model in their post-politics days. Okay, I've been accused of many things on the show, everything from being a cuck to being a Jew conspiracist and lots of other stuff, but I've never been accused of triggering the downfall of the United States of America to third world status. But that's exactly what this caller claims I'm participating in. Take a listen to this voicemail.
Came across your program Flipping Channels. And you know what? You and people like you are the reason why the culture of this country is being diluted. And I say in 2, 3, maybe 4 generations, we will be a third world country because of left-wing extremists, and we will be socialist society besides.
Yeah. I'm not a socialist. Like, I don't know what this guy's talking about, but in some kind of weird way, it's flattering to think that the program has so much power that we could even affect this degree of change. At the top of the show, I was talking about sort of the feelings of futility in the Trump era about how much change we can actually accomplish. Not that I would want to make the United States a third world socialist country. I've never expressed that, and I don't think I have that power. But the idea that someone thinks I might have that power is actually kind of flattering in some way.
Do we want this guy to just continue flipping channels? Do we want him to tune in? I don't know.
Listen, I'm not going to turn away any audience member, but try to understand what the program is if you're going to comment on it. We've got a great bonus show for you today. We will talk about the evolution of so-called magic mushrooms. How many did Pat have in his vegan burger last night? Hopefully he will tell us on the bonus show. We will also talk about a lawsuit from Satanists and Ben Carson's interesting furniture habits. I'll leave it there. Get access to the bonus show at davidpakman.com/membership. Also by being a patron at patreon.com/davidpakman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.